So I've spent a lot of time thinking about what makes musicians successful, but I've never really put down what I've learned into any sort of system or framework that musicians can easily follow. That is until about 2 months ago when a friend of mine asked me this crazy question. He said, if someone offered you $10 million to give them advice on how to be successful as a musician, but to get that $10 million, that advice would have to work within 6 months. What would you tell them? And after grueling over this for the past 2 months, I'm ready to reveal to you the top 7 habits of successful musicians. And the first habit has to do with your perspective. So one of the things that I noticed that keeps musicians from being successful is that they have this extremely narrow focus on literally everything. They focus on the now in terms of like, what results can I get now? And they fail to see the big picture. And they have this scarcity mindset of like limited resources. You hear them say stuff all the time about like how they can't get gigs because all of the other bands are taking up all of the gigs and all of that. So they play this blame game. But musicians who become successful don't operate or see the world that way. They move differently. They tend to be more open-minded and they have a really big growth mindset. And they have this sense of determination where nothing can stop them. Like instead of focusing on who's getting all of the gigs and all of that, they tend to focus on how to get themselves in the position to where they're getting all of the gigs. And so the first habit of successful musicians is they think big. They imagine and create opportunities that small thinkers just tend to overlook. But overall, they just tend to see the big picture. Now, thinking big is absolutely necessary. But without taking action, thinking big is useless. And that's what the next habit is about. So there are musicians out there who are aware and know of these habits I'm sharing with you now and have put them to work. It's how they've become successful. And what that means for you is that when you start applying these habits, you're going to be in competition with other musicians that are also applying these habits. And then it's going to become a matter of who can stay the course longer. It's going to come down to if you can be disciplined and committed, because the path to success is going to test your integrity and it's going to test your motivation to see if you can stay the course. And what that means is you have to outwork the competition. And that's the next habit. So like when other people are sleeping, you're putting in work to improve yourself. When others are out drinking and having a good time and all of that, you're working on your EPK or on your next album. When others are taking those small paying gigs, you're smiling because you've created high paying opportunities for yourself, like I mentioned in the first habit. Now, working hard is key, but doing it with the right attitude, that's a game changer. So one of the biggest issues plaguing the music community today is musicians with absolutely horrible attitudes. We've all experienced or heard of at least that drummer, keys player, guitar player, whatever, who thinks they know everything, thinks they're all that, and they're just far beyond to admitting to making any mistakes. All they ever do is criticize others and treat others like they're beneath them. And they're the ones that always have this reputation of being really arrogant. And the ironic part about this is that somewhere along the way, they've learned or been taught that being this way is what's going to help them get ahead or be successful. And in actuality, it's the biggest thing that's holding them back. The fact of the matter is, successful musicians drop their egos because they understand it gets in the way. And this is the next habit. Successful musicians tend to have a high level of respect for other musicians, and they always focus on the greater good. They don't feel the need to go around boasting about their accomplishments and all that, and they tend to be really humble, and they're definitely willing to admit to mistakes. Okay, so now that you got the right mindset, this next move is the one that's going to set you up for long-term success. But right before we get into that, if you're getting value out of this video so far, do me a quick favor and subscribe to the channel. That's going to help out with everything we're doing around here, and I really appreciate it. Okay, so we got a really huge problem as musicians that's working against us being successful. You know what that problem is? Convenience. We've gotten extremely spoiled by getting things easily. We want to put in minimal effort and get maximal results. And most of all, we want to pay very little and get a whole lot. Like, we want a Lamborghini, but we want it at the price of a Toyota Corolla. But it's not just about money. It's also about time. Like, we want to work out, get in shape, lose 30 pounds, and get six-pack abs by working out once a week for 20 minutes. And this has directly affected how we think about investing in our careers. And this is the next habit, because successful musicians invest in their careers. Whether it's investing money into getting a new piece of gear or equipment, or building a website, or it's just investing time into really learning your craft. The investment of time and money and other resources in your music career is an absolute must if you want to be successful. Now, of course, leveling up requires resources, but it's not just about what you do for yourself. It's about how you interact with others. And this next habit is an absolute superpower, and it's my favorite. So there are people that just seem to be able to move through the world and move through life with ease. And they just tend to be able to always get what they want. They're the person that always, for some unexplained reasons, tend to get the hot girl or the hot guy and the raise on the job and are afforded privileges that a lot of people aren't. But the thing is, these people have mastered this one simple trait that we all really need to get better at. And that trait is they understand people. And that's the next habit. See, they've learned how to talk to people and how to treat people and how to act with people in ways that get them what they want. I like to say that they've learned how to ethically manipulate people, kind of like how really good public speakers know how to get people to take action. And I could make an entire video series on this subject, but it really just comes down to understanding people's deepest needs and their deepest desires, and speaking to those deepest needs and desires when you're interacting with them and when you're making deals with them. So, for example, most musicians would just think if a wedding couple was trying to hire them for their wedding reception, that they're just looking for a band to come in and play some good music and have people dancing for their reception. But what successful musicians understand is that what that couple really wants and desires is to create the most memorable night of their lives and to have their friends and family bragging and talking about that reception for years to come. And that makes them almost 100 times more likely to get hired and paid top price. This is a critical aspect of becoming a successful musician. Successful musicians understand that making a lasting impression, not just musically, but personally, makes them unforgettable. Okay, so you've got the people skills, but success as a musician isn't just about these short-term wins. And this next habit helps you play the long game of success. So if I'm honest, this whole success game can be really challenging for a lot of us. Because as you know, success isn't necessarily an overnight thing, and it a lot of times can take a lot longer than we had hoped. And this can cause us to lose excitement, lose momentum, and get burned out really easily. But the problem is that many musicians just give up and throw in the towel right before they're about to have a breakthrough. I remember when I was in college and I was pledging a fraternity, and our pledge process was really long and strenuous. And we had this guy that dropped out, literally dropped off the line the night before we crossed into the fraternity. And his biggest regret to this day is that he didn't stay the course another day to get what he had worked so hard for. And this is an example of why we need to focus on longevity if we want to be successful. And this is the next habit. We have to be resilient and always be ready to keep pushing through. And the way you do this is that you just continue to create short-term goals and achieve them while keeping the big picture in mind. So you shoot for the moon, but you celebrate when you hit the clouds and the stars. And finally, as you are working toward your successful career in music, there's one more crucial piece to remember, because staying in the game takes more than just drive. So something that has started to emerge more and more over the past decade or so concerning musicians is things like depression and anxiety. It's a cultural phenomenon that has kind of bled into our music circles. And these sort of disorders can really get in the way of us being successful and really hold us back. And I'm in no way a specialist on this in any kind of way, but I've seen how this affects a lot of musicians and really gets in the way of their progress. So if we want to be successful as musicians, we really need to develop this habit of taking care of our mental health. We want to make that one of our primary focuses, not just being successful, but actually being able to enjoy the success once we achieve it. And some ways that you can do that is, of course, just talk to someone if you need help. You can start eating better and sleeping better and working out and exercising more and getting out of bad situations and all of that affect your mental health. But it really just comes down to researching things that can help with these sort of ailments, so to speak, and taking action on them when you can. Now, we've covered all of these powerful habits that can set you up for a successful career in music. But even with all of these habits, there's one mistake that might be holding you back. And most musicians don't even realize they're making it. So check out this video where I break down this habit and show you how to avoid it so you can keep your career moving forward and avoid unnecessary setbacks.